and he probably knows more about media than anybody else in the universe, right, Joe?
Right. Yeah, I worked some other places, which just means I can't hold a job. But, you know, Kathy, when you told me to moderate this panel, I thought you said the NewFront, and I thought it was going to be about adult sites. So I prepped the anyway. On that note, if I could invite our panelists to the stage, and if you could seat from my left, Chet Fenster, who is the managing partner of MEC Entertainment. We have Andrew Snyder, who's with Original Video for Yahoo. We have Beth Lawrence, who's Executive Vice President, Ad Sales and Media Solutions for the Weather Channel Companies. Also worked at Adweek a long time ago. We have John McCarris, who's Senior Vice President, Brand Content for Digitas. And we have Dave Morgan, who's CEO of Simul Media. Okay. Well, let's see. It was supposed to be in the order that, so Chet should be here, then Brian.
Check that. Beth, you're right there. And then John, you're right there.
I'm sorry, I said
Dave,
Brian.
perfect.
Andrew.
Right.
Because we have, even though Brian Hunt is listed on the formal agenda, it is Andrew Snyder who's sitting next to me, so hopefully the slide will reflect that.
I'll do my best to stand in for
So
him.
I love the fact that we led off with Alan and I always say Meshuggah, but it's Machinima, because they are literally the poster child. Anyway, we're going to start this off with an exercise, okay? And I just thought of this. So I want each of you take a sheet.
This is the judging scoring.
Origami again, Joe.
So,
Thank you.
take a pen.
Okay.
Are we going to write down the closing price of Facebook on this sheet?
That's the last question.
CBS's increase this year on CPM.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Do you have a pen?
I don't.
Okay, hold on.
I've got one.
All right.
You know what? I'm a Boy Scout.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so I handed them all a blank sheet of paper that just had the word week written on it. So I want each of you to write a word before that. What is this week? And then give it back to me. You don't have to sign your name. This could be like an anonymous ballot. I'll write it down too. And then you can fold it and hand it back to me. Take your time. Okay, Beth gets the order. Just one word. You don't have to write your whole bio. Oh, you can keep the pens. Gratis.
Ampersand for you, John. Just a couple of them.
Terrible writing. Sorry.
That's okay. Now we'll do the official balloting scoring. Good. Good.
And the winner of American Idol is...
Good. Oh, wow, this is totally what I didn't expect. So here are the answers, and no attribution. This is not a panel about attribution. So customer week, TV show pickup week, somebody cheated and used 3 words and a hyphen, social week, internet week, and tipping point week. Okay, so I thought people would either say internet week or upfront week, because that's the 2 big industry weeks going on this week. And I think it is an interesting juxtaposition, and it was kind of the opening point I wanted to make. But I also wanted to say that my response is, you're all wrong, it's actually OMMA week. That was for Ken Fadner. So the reason I said that is we had an event yesterday where I kind of started off with that point too, which is the confluence of having Internet Week and Upfront Week in the same week is really telling in a lot of ways. And I think to some extent the NewFronts are a great prelude into this conversation and this whole day and what we're really talking about here, which is about the convergence of online video and television to some extent and how markets are made around that. So I didn't really allow you to introduce yourselves, so maybe I should get into that and just briefly give your own orientation about how you think the role the NewFronts play in this kind of convergence that's taking place now. And I'd like to save John McCarris to the end, because I don't know if you all realize, because there's been so much coverage of the NewFronts, but it was really incubated by Digitas, and it started, I don't know, at least, what, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, this is year 5, I think.
Year 5, okay. So, and it really started more as a concept development opportunity, less negotiating, but more really to kind of...
Yeah, we can talk about that.
All right, maybe you should start and give an introduction, explain a little bit, brief history of the NewFront and why it is the way it is now.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. And it is, I'll take the credit for writing Tipping Point Week, I think, because it was not a question of if, it was a question of when, in terms of all of the digital publishers getting together with all the investments that have been made to really form a market. And while Digitas may have been the instigator, the credit goes to all the publishers for laying down their swords and coming together for the first time in an enormous way, beyond what we had possibly imagined. But Digitas did start with a thought leadership event about 5 years ago, and the truth is, we thought we were going to form a market 5 years ago with a bunch of card table chairs and no budget. We had a small hall. We convinced Michael Eisner to come and kick it off, and he had a big Band-Aid across his nose, having had some surgery. It was very sort of unusual and kind of a clumsy conversation. It was like a high school square dance with brands and content creators. And that's turned over time into a pretty amazing coming together of all of the partners that you need, from our perspective, to create a creative market space. And then I think this year was just the moment that we thought would be earlier, but it was this year where the content-led media market formed around this, and now we have something.
Okay, actually, let me go to Chet then on that note, because he represents another ad agency. Why don't you pick up from there and tell me what you think about the role of the NewFront, and especially since it was incubated by a somewhat competitive organization, and how neutral can that become now, and is it a good thing, and will it gain steam?
Yeah, I think it's 100% neutral. I think that was also part of the design by John and team. I mean, even 5 years ago, they opened up the door and they said other people can absolutely come. This is really a showcase for the publishers. I don't know that we always felt comfortable going into your house, so to speak. But it's absolutely neutral now, because this is really a showcase. It's a showcase for new content. It's a showcase for new models, and because it doesn't even happen at Digitas, and they're happening in these grand auditoriums or the same places that some people are throwing their upfront, the TV upfront or the traditional upfront presentations. It's absolutely an open marketplace now.
Okay, and also explain what your role is within
Sure.
MEC.
So I head up so I work for Media Edge, or otherwise known as MEC, which is a global communications planning and implementation agency. I run the entertainment practice inside of MEC, and that advises clients on content strategy, and we also create content for our clients, everything from web series to television shows, in English and in Spanish, and we've done programs in social and digital as well.
So we have two agency executives who are more involved in development, not hardcore buying of media, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and Beth?
So thank you again for having us. Joe and I worked together many years ago at Adweek. So I run sales for all screens at the Weather Channel companies, and we think of it as 4: TV, web, mobile, and tablet as its own screen. It's been fun, it's been interesting, and we're watching the whole video business transform. But in terms of the NewFront, so I didn't go to all of them. I went to NBC's because NBC's a part owner of our company. And I think it's a great idea, and we actually tried this years ago at Yahoo. I worked at Yahoo from '03 to the end of '09, and we tried to do an in-front in 2000, I think it was 2005, when Terry Semel was still the CEO. And we got a massive audience to show up, and it's like, what? A portal is doing an in-front? What are they going to say? But it was before video, so it was kind of an idea before its time. So to have this massive 2,000 person audience and talk about, display advertising was just kind of, it didn't quite resonate. So I love what's happened with the development over the past 5 years, and I think these companies like Yahoo and YouTube and MSN put a tremendous amount of effort into these shows and got the buzz, and I think it's great. I think it's good for the business.
And if I can add something, because I guess it was 5 years ago or maybe longer, AOL did something. I think they called it the NewFront, if I recall, and they did this at Time Warner Center, and they presented shows from Endemol, from Mark Burnett, and they had video and they had digital components to them, and everyone needed to be triggered by an advertiser commitment. And a year later, 2 years later, they still hadn't made any of those programs. And so they went out to the marketplace. The marketplace didn't respond. I think the pricing was too high. Now, fast forward to where we are now, the publishers are coming out and they're saying, we're making this investment regardless. We're just like traditional television. We're making this regardless of whether we have an advertiser to trigger that green light, and that's been the big difference this year.
Yeah, I think that's a big story. It's well said, because deficit financing is now here for the web, following the audiences. It's big money.
Okay.
All of those partners, demonstrated that.
I want to come back to the economic models, but I want to get done introducing the rest of the panel. So Dave, you're actually, most people probably think of you as an online player, but you're really a TV player now, and in some ways you're a buyer, an ad network, an intermediary, repackaging television. So give a little bit of your background on what you think of the role of the NewFront.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Joe, my background is I started in online advertising 20 years ago, pre-web, with some early online ad serving technology, and on that sales company I started Real Media, which became 24/7 Real Media, now part of WPP, and then Dakota, which became part of AOL Time Warner. Simul Media is really trying to do what we were doing on the web on television, on linear television, and it's trying to leverage direct viewing data, set-top box data from 30 million, anonymous data on 30 million Americans second by second, and using that to make television advertising today much more targetable and much more efficient, particularly with fragmentations change it so much. I, as you know, probably have a bit of a contrarian view on the bright shiny object that we'll call web video, and some of the attention around it. I think it's extraordinary. I think what we're doing with web video today is big. I think it is going to have fundamental impacts in the marketplace. But now, having spent the last 3 years of my life within the television world, I think that I actually think a lot of people with digital backgrounds and with a real desire to deliver more value would be better looking at what can be done with TV as we have it today, and not lose sight of the fact that, the core things. I was with Mike Kelly yesterday, who was a colleague of mine at AOL, and also with Beth, and and he said, I asked him in a conference what he thought about, having been across magazines, online, and TV, and he said, well, I guess what I really should say is that if you want to play in a CPM world, you better have an M, and so. And he said that M means both scale and impact. And I think that's one of the things that I think is important for us to understand today. There's extraordinary things happening, and the NewFront gave it a lot of attention. But our world's being defined by the upfront this week. And Terry Kawaja said yesterday, just to put things in perspective, that the net, if you combine the net revenue of all web video ad networks today and add them up, they do not exceed the the compensation for Leslie Moonves over the last 3 years.
Which probably explains why Les was on stage yesterday saying it's a single screen experience for us. Les is a well-compensated guy, more so than me. I'm Andrew Snyder, and I have the good fortune to lead the video and event sponsorship teams at Yahoo. And I spent about 12 years in the TV world, always working on the digital side, but at places like Discovery and ESPN. So I knew what it took to produce an upfront, and I knew what that marketplace was like. And if you set the clock back, say 6 months from now, we were planning on whether or not we should pull the trigger on our own upfront event. And it's expensive, and it takes a lot of work, months and months of work to pull off. But we'd been in development on a really robust schedule of programming. We're starting to adjust our business, certainly going after deficit financing of original video content and programming it on vertical slates, if you will, going after a female audience, programming comedy content. We announced at our upfront event that we have a men's schedule coming up soon, and we knew that we needed a forum to present all of that content and draw some focus to it. But you know, what we needed was an instigator. What we needed was a reason to move. And for us, the opportunity to partner with Digitas and with other publishers to really draw focus to the great effort that we were putting into all of the production and the investment that we had against this video content was exactly what the doctor ordered. We went in with our eyes open. We knew we were taking on some risk. We were partnering with our competitors to a certain degree to pull this off together, but we just felt like it was exactly the moment that the industry needed to draw a level of attention to the great work that's going on across the industry.
All right, well, that was a great opening. So many places to jump in now. We have upfronts, new fronts, in fronts. We do a thing called the out front. These people are our down front. I still like the notion of the nude front, but that's a different panel. And but it's all kind of a front, right? I mean, when you think about it. And that is a leading question, because if you think about how this all really started, it started back when television started, and the networks and the big advertisers got together to do development meetings. And, you know, American public was just hungry for any content. It was really largely a sponsored distribution game back then. The networks had controlled distribution. The sponsors, in a lot of cases, brought the content. There were entitlements, Texaco Star Theater, you know, Kraft whatever, you know. Kraft Playhouse. And then over time, because of the economics of business and more brands and advertisers coming in, it got parsed down into, buying reach and associations with content. And then the upfront as we know it today, it didn't really start, I don't think, until like the mid-'70s, and became this bizarre, and with the fragmentation of television, more and more players have tried to get into that box, and it is about competition for attention and this allocation mentality that there's this finite inventory that's going up for sale. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, and I know Dave would probably debate it with me, how finite the inventory really is, because I think there's an infinite capacity. But this panel is really designed to talk about the market structure and why the NewFront exists and what the role of it is. So I want to flip this one to the agency side, and you're not hardcore buyers, but I remember years ago when Publicis created Viva Key and the video integration group, or whatever he called it, the TV and online video had converged, and they came up with something called the broadband embrace, right? And the goal there, they didn't want to use the word upfront initially, because they were afraid that it would get into this allocation mentality and would actually be a disservice for clients and brands by putting them in this position where they had to compete, you know, in a time-sensitive marketplace for good inventories. And I'm trying to figure out what's changed, where now in 2012, it's good to be upfront again. It's good to be in this bizarre allocation mentality. What shifted, and is this really in the best interest of clients to do this way, to get caught up in that whole market frenzy aspect? Yeah. Tough question,
yeah,
but
I'm happy to take it. Look, I mean, we've thought a ton about this, and I'm just going to, take a little bit of a dig at Dave here, because the reality is, if you think about the notion of quality original video content at scale, there is still scarcity. And the reason that we were very specific about the language of the NewFront, and if you look at the logo, it's an up crossed out with a new written in, because there is some notion of a market opportunity. But I don't think you would say that all the partners in the NewFront this year are booking most of their inventory in an upfront-like environment, although some of them are having meaningful upfront commitments. I think what you do have in digital is you have rapid evolution of all the tools, the ideas, the platforms, the into-now solutions, the social activation. And so with that, you need that innovation. And so it's half new and half up in the end. It's different, but there is still the opportunity for a market-like moment.
What's amazing for me is that at our event, first of all, we started off with a fairly small venue, and we found immediately that there was so much interest and demand that we had to get a bigger room. So we booked a bigger room. Then it became clear that we were going to need an overflow room. So we booked an overflow room, so we were showing it on closed circuit out in an auxiliary
Whatever you
room.
do, don't squeeze Erwin Gottlieb out of your...
That's right.
Okay.
He had a reserve seat. And then what we found is that once the room filled up and it was packed house, the people that were there were not necessarily just digital buyers. It was presidents of agencies and senior level clients who were there to understand what's happening in the space. And so that was a message to us that the market is ready and people are receptive. And on the heels of that, like John hinted at, there's absolutely transactional activity. And the transactions, some of them are happening on a year-long upfront type basis. Some of them are happening around individual show integration. So I think one of the things that we do really well as an industry is we provide a number of different ways that clients can get involved and ways you can buy into the conversation with audiences on the web and on various digital platforms. So what we're seeing now is the buying activity starting
I think
to happen.
this works great for you guys to be part of that conversation. Now, I really want to know from a buyer's perspective, and maybe even from an integrated TV company, digital company's perspective, whether it makes sense to have all that noise and distraction going on and more. I mean, I talked to buyers, months ago saying they couldn't go to all these things now, and they're delegating more and more junior people to go out, and even the juniors can't do it. There's just too much going on.
So what's interesting for us is we don't have the scale to have a huge television upfront presentation or a digital presentation yet, but the way we do the TV upfront is we travel it around. So we have an upfront presentation that includes the 4 screens, so it's not just about television. Because a lot of the original programming that we it gets recut for 3 to 5 minute webisodes and mobisodes, which is kind of sexy. And when you travel that around and we might tell a group of 4 people, or we might tell 150 people at Starcom. We have all these different audiences, but our upfront presentation is a multi-screen story. So when you're pitching for this business to get laid in up front, the agencies will say to us, well, talk to me about web and mobile at the same time. They can't always buy it, and it still can be a little clunky to try to do all of it at the same time. But we generate that interest across 4 screens just by telling really one story, which is good.
All right, let's switch over to the economics of the business. Dave kind of started that pissing match, that's good, by talking about how scarce and little inventory there really is online. I'm actually going to say you're a buyer, okay? Because I really think you are. You procure inventory, and I'd like to know whether you might at some point also bring in online video into your model. But what I want to do is start with where you left off, how little money, the Leslie Moonves compensation model. I don't know, what is it? Is it $1 billion that's spent on the video market now, or is it?
Well, so at least numbers I've heard yesterday from a couple folks, we're at about $2 billion, $2.3 billion spent last year on online video. Of that, 70%, 65 to 70% went to Google, YouTube.
Okay.
Hulu had about 400 million of it, at least in what's been reported in documents. And ad networks had about 400, and I don't know if Yahoo breaks out theirs.
We don't.
Okay. All right.
So I wasn't going to suggest one. So, but I think the point is that, you invoked Erwin Gottlieb's name, so I'll say something that he says pretty regularly, and you can.
I'll be careful what I say about my boss.
My
boss's boss.
Nothing I wouldn't say to him directly. I think that what we saw in the NewFront is a great platform to show off a lot of great stuff that's happening and give us a sense of the vision and what's going to happen in the future. I don't think we should, and positioning around the upfront has a nice juxtaposition. It makes Wall Street write about it. It makes you write about it and put events. But I don't think we should confuse it with the economics that are going on over the next 6 or 7 or 8 weeks that are going to determine things. And the point I would make is, of the 100 hours of video that are watched today of every 100 hours that are watched today in America, only 1 hour is watched streamed.
Yeah, that's where I was going,
Yeah,
Dave.
and so what Irwin says is, look, you can't, like the upfront is a futures market where you've got something that's already known as precious, scarce, and there's immediacy around its disposition. And if you don't buy it in the future, you won't own it when you need it. The piece that I think that web video misses, and the online misses, unfortunately, outside of search, is impact.
Right.
So take the scale part away. You name to me one major offline marketer, in the United States, who relies on television advertising, who could afford to turn TV ads off for 2 months and wouldn't see a significant diminution in sales, or would be able to launch a new product. But we don't have that case in online today. And so this notion of scarcity is entirely around, I want to be associated with this great project which could give me good halo, but for an offline marketer, we don't yet associate the online with butts in seats stuff off shelves.
You might have the opposite, with GM pulling out of Facebook, allegedly because its ads aren't working there.
Well, I think that's totally just the positioning for the upfronts. I think they wanted to go punch a gorilla so that they could look tough when they go into the upfronts.
Most likely.
You know, look. The bottom line is there are lots of cracks if you think about, and again back to this notion of the tipping point. I have not read a single article other than ones that might talk about specific programming being showcased in the broadcast upfronts that has not been framed in the context of digital and what happened in the last month. We have, Revision 3 being bought by Discovery within the last month. You have TBS now partnering with Funny or Die. I mean, this is not accidental. And the truth is that, and your point is well taken as it relates to the holy grail of engagement in what is a two-way dialogue on the web. We all believe that, the arrival of social is basically going to be the opportunity for us to connect the dots to true impact. And that is why all the broadcasters are hanging on to this notion of social TV, because they want to be in that conversation, knowing where it's going. So you can argue whether right now we have that case, but I don't think anybody with vision is sitting back and assuming that television is going to continue to dominate. We're indexing off a low base, and all you have to do is map it out.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, but to Dave's point, what the NewFronts were about and what these showcases are about, to create scarcity for those few titles, but also that's what the future is going to look like. So the reason you're seeing acquisitions is because the companies need to grow. They know that that they're going to gain share. They know that brands want to invest in online, so they can either make a stake and buy one of those companies early now at a low valuation, or wait till the marketplace is more mature and spend more money. So they might as well buy them now, where they can learn about, where they can borrow some of their low budget production techniques, and they can get the built-in audience, whatever number of uniques they have a month, and then grow that and cross-promote it with their own channel properties. So that's why you're seeing that consolidation happen, or will happen.
Can I argue with you for a second?
Go for it.
You're right.
No fisticuffs, but I think what's happening is that brands are absolutely starting to turn off TV and are now launching products on digital. And it's not happening across the board, but we announced recently that Ford is going to launch a new electric vehicle, the new Focus, in a digital video series that will run exclusively on Yahoo. And the big insight for them is that they have seen great impact from the campaigns that they've run in online video. And for a brand that needs to demonstrate and educate consumers about how the electric vehicle works in your life, they need a venue where they can tell a longer story, and digital does that.
But they're still going to support it with TV.
Yeah, just let's be clear. There's great PR in doing that. We've been having that for 18 years, the launching on a website and do these things, and I think it's extraordinary brochure. I want to incite some things here. I think it's extraordinary brochureware. I think it's a great way to qualify things. It's great corp comm. You can move a lot of messaging out. But Ford is going to support Ford manufacturing and Tier 2 and Tier 3 spend on Ford vehicles is going to be well over $1.6 billion, I think, this year in the United States. And Ford could never turn it off. If Ford went to their dealers and said, hey, everybody, we're going to suppress all TV advertising for 3 months, and we're going to go web only, their dealer, I mean, they'd lose their dealers. They'd get sued by all of them. So.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing that, but, you know, this is already starting. I mean, Samsung just was quoted as saying they're shifting 30% of their budget to digital. I think you're about to hear some more of those announcements. So, you know, you have two choices here. Either we start to look at this opportunity vis-a-vis what is a increasingly expensive platform in television, and I think the one thing that television is going to be tough to beat on is this notion of the campaign opportunity driving impact, if you want to call it that, within a short period of time. And web video does tend to scale and aggregate differently. And you know, as we all transition to conversation at some level, it's going to be very interesting to see, you know, how this impacts the way that we market. Because you know, there is a movement afoot into conversation now, and so you know, I think we're going to see less focus on campaign.
You know, there was a time. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead. You're the moderator.
This is all good. I just was trying to resolve one point, which is, and you're all addressing excellent points. And I think Chet's right that these companies are buying it on the come. I think you're right that big brands are starting to dabble and take stakes with introducing brands and things. But I think Dave is right. Let's put aside impact and all of the real world things that brands want to do, right? What people are actually buying and selling in upfront markets, whether they're online or television, are GRPs, right? And all of the metrics we use now, and I know Nielsen's trying to incorporate online GRPs now through the online campaign measurement system. The reality is 98 or 99% of all impressions are still through television. Now, I think that's an artifact personally, but we're not here to discuss Nielsen's methods. We're here to discuss what people buy and sell. And if you all agree that that's what we're buying in the upfront, are these impressions, then how can this business ever scale? What's the point of doing these new fronts when 99% of the impressions are on that other medium? Sorry, go.
I think what you're going to see is a shift in the way that publishers produce and present content. And a lot of it has to do with the demand, right? So the demand exists against online video, and I think we would generally all agree that there is a high degree of scarcity against the best video content on the web. You can roll up distribution across a network. That's still a way to drive scale at fairly efficient prices. But if you want to appear adjacent to the best original video programming on the web, there's scarcity there. And so there is, the upfront marketplace has a role in that. But I think what you're going to see, based on the demand that exists in the channel and the notion that advertisers are looking to follow those audiences into digital, is you'll see publishers start to publish video content and present video content much more aggressively as part of the site framework. So you're probably in like a 2 or 3 year cycle where the publishing community is catching up to the demand that we know will exist.
And I would add, and I would agree with, I think what we're going to see is that we're going to find the places where digital and web video is additive and complementary, both in reach. I mean, we certainly have one of television's problems is that there's a real big difference between heavy TV viewers and light TV viewers. And I know Nielsen and Google put some research out recently, a little specious because it was like 4% increase in all light TV viewers if you went to web video, because unfortunately the heaviest web video viewers also watch 4 hours of TV a day, which is a problem. But that is actually giving me a compliment, because you can do things in the two-way conversation in web video and in digital you can't do in TV. And I think the two-screen experiences we're seeing, the check-in services like Get Glue, that's all going to start wrapping it together. But I do believe it is going to be about audience reach, depth of engagement and impact, and ultimately measurability. And it's going to require significant data-driven, insight-driven coordination across those, and I think we'll probably see virtually all online impressions have a GRP-based metric with them also within the next 2 years.
I agree. I totally agree. And I have the luxury of having, TV and web video, and so we worried at one point, you know, do you cannibalize your own audience as you roll out these, you know, interesting products? And, you know, then we came to the realization if we don't cannibalize our own audience, someone else is going to cannibalize it for us. And what happens is the more you use, the more you use. So, you know, our new iPhone app launched today. Hope you download the new one. And it's not like that took viewers away from weather.com or from television. It's just we put more people watching on more screens. And so, but I agree. I think we're a couple years away from a universal measurement.
But I think that was the big story this year, that publishers were coming in and for the first time saying, so the argument's going to be about what's the right conversion, but publishers are coming in because they want to sell that video, and they're talking to the digital teams with the traditional broadcast buyers in the same room, and they're saying, we'll sell it to you any way you want to buy it, and we'll make that, you know, we think this is the conversion.
Okay, we got to turn over to the audience if there are any questions, because we'll run out of time. Okay, are there questions? If there are not...
We have a question right there, Rob.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bob Mitchell, and I'm with NView. I guess my question is, with online video, I know we're talking about, paid is the focus of this panel, but online video is also distributed with paid, earned, owned, and shared. So I would love a distinction in how they all work together.
Yeah, I was just going to go to that question. Nobody asked it. But, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Put aside this mishigas. Let's talk about models like Machinima, which is, you guys, thank you. You guys can go direct.
Bless you.
You guys, the agencies, can go direct now. You don't need those intermediaries to distribute brand content anymore.
I disagree. Only you need publishers like Machinima or Yahoo. They've done a great job at aggregating audiences. So anybody can put up web on the video, right? So I'm 12 years old and I'm on my skateboard and I can put it up to YouTube and I can go out and tell all my friends about it. If I'm really lucky, it'll happen. If we're a brand, we can spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to drive. To put up banner ads or pay for search and try to drive to it. But if you have publishers or channels, if you want to call them, from YouTube or whatever terminology you want to use, that have already aggregated an audience that people are used to going there, why wouldn't you put up your brand video there where you already have a baseline audience? So we don't think of them as middlemen. We think of them as great partners and a great kindler, if you will, to ignite a video or a video series.
Yeah, we haven't really gotten into, all the other opportunities here, but I think one has to be that typically, at least for now, you see a different rights picture around web video, and some of the publishers, even despite lots of investment, are in a position to allow distribution in innovative ways across owned channels for brands. So, to the extent some of this content is living for a long period of time, those become huge impression opportunities. Now, Dave, we can argue, it comes over a long period of time and maybe it's less valuable. But if you're going to say to me, let's invest in a small cable channel that might rerun a show 2 or 3 or 4 times versus content that might live nearly into perpetuity. I mean, we had one YouTube channel owner at the Digitas NewFront this year, Michelle Fan, who's in the beauty space and has aggregated over 600 million views of her own video content. And so has that been leveraged yet? Not necessarily, but it's continuing to motor on. So, I think that's going to contribute to the opportunity.
Any other questions from the audience?
Of course, I have a question.
Okay.
John, this sort of gets to something I was interested about is, when you go to, the online NewFront presentations or whatever we're calling them, it tends to surface, obviously, the content that is being distributed and produced by the really big players. And, I kind of wondered how that other content that is more niche or more sort of, organic, how that really gets surfaced. You guys do it at yours, but it's sort of, you sort of feel like everything is getting funneled through these big channels when, there may be some really great stuff out there that just completely falls off the radar because it's not produced by Yahoo or AOL or whoever.
Yeah, and it's a challenge. And, Joe mentioned there's a lot of events to go to. I think this year, look, this is going to happen again. It'll probably happen in a shorter period of time, is my guess, partly due to the amount of time that we had to plan. Which was 7 weeks from a dead start. We ended up with 22 events over 14 days without solicitation. The only qualification for the sellers was creators and distributors of original quality video content at scale. So they had to both create and distribute, and that allowed us to, to provide a curated list of show opportunities that came from actually both big and small players. So NBC obviously came to the party just after the February 20th announcement. But you also saw partners like Pop Sugar and Vivo and Disney and Digital Broadcast Group and Decca. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we all have to tackle now as a group is how do we curate this in a relevant way. So that it is meaningful, but at the same time, doesn't swamp everybody and turn into a flea market.
I'm wondering too, how much business do you think will be written in the next, 8-10 weeks as a result of the NewFronts?
The estimates I've heard, range from 100 million to $1 billion.
And how, is there any way to really get a beat on that? The one thing that's weird about this market is it's not going to move in the same way that the network upfront. It goes back to the scarcity thing. And the scarcity thing works for the networks because all of a sudden they can say, well, we wrote X amount of business. Well, that number is fungible too, but is there going to be any way to quantify this?
And is that incremental over
Public
what
numbers.
it was?
We've got some public companies involved, so,
Is that incremental new over what it had been?
Again, this is just what we're hearing right now. I think it's a little bit early. I think it's going to take us a year to really get our arms around how this shakes out.
Is there another question?
Question from the audience?
I have a good wrap-up question, which is, I've watched a lot of platforms of television evolve over my time covering the business. We used to call it like cable and satellite, syndication, and we in the trades and the business get very hung up on the distinctions between these platforms, but all the research I've ever seen is to the consumer. It's about the content, the programs, the characters. Do you think the same thing's going to happen here with online video versus television? Dave, you don't have to answer this. But.
I think it's already happened. And if you look at a younger audience, and I'll use the YouTube example. Not people know of Fred, but also if you look at Ray WJ, who has the #1 YouTube channel and gets about 2 million views every time within 48 hours of when he posts something, and he'll get 100,000 comments in one day. So. Those aren't big numbers. They're not going to rival a television show, maybe on a small cable network, and it's obviously not even a half-hour show. But that's the audience embracing him. It's a younger audience. It's kids that are coming home from school or in college, and they like him or Michelle Phan, and they're celebrities to a younger generation. So I think that will happen, just like there are distinctive voices or pop-out stars from cable. The same will happen to them, and then naturally they'll progress. Just like people that pop on television end up with feature film careers, people that are popping on YouTube or on these other digital video because the economics of those productions are so low and they're not making a lot of money, they'll end up on a television series or they'll end up in other platforms.
I guess my parting thought is you just, I think our philosophy is you just have to give the consumer what they want, and you can't fight it. If they insist on watching it this big, then when you cut and film original content, you got to cut it for this size and give them what they want.
Two things. One, to Chet's point, The new A-listers, where A is for audience, that's all that matters. And I think that's going to start to take shape. And then the second thing is just relative to the NewFronts. This year, a lot of credit goes to all the partners for coming together and challenging themselves to organize. And the only other thing that needs to happen is we as agencies now need to come together and figure out how to support this and drive it. And you know, to Chet's point, you know, it is an open market, and Chet's been a leader in broadcasting this, but we need everybody else to step up.
All right, that might be a good end note. I know you guys, unless you have
Yeah, I
final
mean,
words.
what I would say, I'd come back to the question you asked at the front end, which is what week is it? It's upfront week,
Right.
right? I mean, if you really get down to it, it's upfront week. And there's been a lot of noise about what the television networks have presented. I would put our roster of original programming up against any of them.
Sure.
Because I think with the combination of production quality and talent, digital videos there, and it's not just us, it's other players in the industry as well. And I think the story that will come out of this is that there is great video programming, and in many cases, the audiences to back it up and unlock a very big market.
Okay, any final word, Dave?
I guess we'll see it in the ratings and in the dollars.
TV.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to talking about the NewFront next year.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thanks, Joe.
exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, everybody.